Holy crap, man. I mean, what the hell? It's minus 13, and we had at least a couple inches of snow last night. Might as well be using this damn thing. I haven't put it away yet. It's middle of April. At least the sun's shining. And at least the forecast is optimistic. Holy, talk about testing your patience. This bloody weather. I promise this will be the last snow complaining type video for the spring. It's getting really tired. But I have so much work to do. We have these hives, they're in terrific shape, and we're only halfway done with the first round of work we got to do. So we have to get busy here, but I got to wait on the weather to be able to do that. I have so much work to do. I don't want to venture onto the farm because I got to get work done here, and I know if I go up to the farm they'll just load me with stuff to do there. So I got to keep the focus on my hives, got to keep the focus on the apiary and trying to keep things, you know, progressing forward. So on that note, the next thing I'm going to do today, just trying to keep busy, just trying to accomplish something throughout these days. I'm going to fill in dead spots today, and I'm going to fill them in with these 5-frame nukes that I have. We've gone through, and on my second time through we're a little more thorough. We can kind of see what's happening a little bit better now. We're identifying those queenless, those brood, those drone layers. So we're pulling out a few more. So we're looking like we're getting about a 5. By the time I'm through the whole apiary, I bet you once I take my third round call, I'll be around that 10% loss for the winter, which is pretty good if you ask me. So what I'm going to do is in that 10% loss, or in those empty spots that we have in the yards right now, I'm going to go through, I'm going to follow through with my whole program of rejuvenating this apiary, continual rejuvenation. And one of those things is filling in those dead spots. And I like filling them in as quickly as I can, so when I'm going through with my work, I'm not obsessed over those empty spots within the yards. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to pick up these nukes that shown some promise, and I marked them with the blue tag. That means they're full of bees. And it's a good day to move because there isn't a whole lot of activity, and my movement's going to be fairly stress-free. So I'm going to pick these girls up, I'm going to take them out to the yards, and I'm just going to drop that nuke into that spot just to hold that spot as a place taker until we can come around when it warms up and we can transfer that nuke into an empty single shell. Working through the yards, working through tough conditions like this, where it's cold and there isn't a lot of resource coming in, these bees really have to manage themselves to, you know, that certain balance, that equilibrium, which they are capable of sustaining throughout this variable condition. These conditions are very variable in the sense that it's warm, it's cold, there's intermittent inflow of resource coming in. So these hives really have to be able to truly define the progress that they're moving forward. Otherwise, they simply will collapse. So as we're going through these colonies and we're working them through these tough conditions, you can really see that well-defined nest, and you can really tune into exactly that size of colony and the vigor expressed within it, because they're not going to provide abundance over what they can actually sustain themselves. So I'm going through and counting these frames of bees, and you go down and you take a look at the amount of brood that they have established and which they're maintaining, and it really tells you a true reflection on the condition of that colony. And you'll notice that these hives will be a nice cluster of bees in there, and you look down into the brood nest and you can see exactly what had gone on that week and a half before that, just by the staging of the brood and the development. That queen's laying eggs like crazy. She'll lay eggs as hard and as fast as she can this time of year. It's a matter of those worker bees, which then take those eggs, and it depends on how optimistic they are at that particular time on taking that egg as it hatches into development. So if you see a nest that has all stages, from eggs right up to mature brood, all stages of larvae, all stages of capped brood, then you can tell that that nest is feeling good, it's robust, the conditions warranted it just to progress nice and smoothly through all those variable conditions. But as you're going through, and kind of what I'm seeing in my nests right now, you're seeing stagey brood. Well defined, obviously, but just stagey, where certain days they pull back a little bit more, certain days they ramp ahead a little bit more, just as they're trying to find that equilibrium, that balance within that nest to be able to progress this hive, their colony, throughout into spring. Right now is an extremely critical time for these nests in their development, as they take that winter nest and they move it forward into spring bees. They're in fact taking those old winter bees and they're flipping it out into a young, youthful nest. And they can only do that with resources, and they can only do that with optimism. And if they don't have the inflow coming in, they're relying on building out that nest with what they have internally within that nest and within themselves. So it just depends on how much resource they have on hand to be able to develop these bees, flip them into that spring nest. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of inflow right now, so it's kind of staggered the development of these hives. So it really pressures these small ones. Like the big ones, they got all this resource on hand, they got pollen, they got all this body fat within them. They develop out like 2 or 3 frames of brood, which can flip them nice and comfortably into a spring nest. But when you get these small ones, these small hives that are only 2 frames of bees, 3 frames of bees, and they're trying to muster as much resource and as much colony girth as they can. If they can't rear enough brood to be able to flip themselves over to be able to sustain the size of that nest, then they just start falling backwards. And through cold weather like this is what I'm going to start seeing. Those small ones I've tagged that showed a little bit of optimism when they first come out. They've staggered through this cold weather, and I'm expecting that they're going to fall back a little bit. So here's one of the colonies that I've tagged. So that tag tells me that this colony is small. So right away I look at that and I'm saying, whoop, that colony is, it's under threat. So we'll just take a look. And obviously they are, because look at that, there's hardly any bees showing on the bottom frames there. But I've been looking down in the frames here, and I'm not sure if you can see as well as I can, but they're pretty much covering that white plastic frame. side to side. And the integrity of that cluster I'm looking in there is very well defined. Actually, there's a few on that side too. But I bet you if I go into this colony, and I'm not going to because it's too bloody cold, but I bet you they have that white frame laid out. And I bet you there's at least 3/4 of that frame, maybe half to 3/4, with cap brood right now, if not on that frame beside it too. So if they've been able to rear enough brood on that, let's say a frame between those two of cap brood, that frame will emerge and it will turn into 2 to 3 frames of bees. And this colony just advanced. So look at those guys. Very well defined. Not sure if you can see that. I'll turn them into the sun a little bit. There you go. The integrity of that cluster, you can see exactly where it is right now. So these little guys are battling back. I think they're going to do just fine. They're showing order. They're showing a collective effort. That's all positive signs. So I'm going to come back to this colony when it warms up this weekend. I'm going to poke down, take a look. I'm going to see what kind of progress they've been able to establish and maintain as they move forward throughout all these tough conditions. I was expecting, if this colony would have been, if we would have had the conditions that are a lot warmer than it is right now, like it's -8 right now, if it was like +8, they've been able to, you know, maintain that cluster over 3 frames instead of just 1.5, then their progress would have been a lot more easy. But easy is not in the cards this spring. A little bit of struggle, but also it's reinforcing that resilience. And that's what I want to promote in this apiary.